we say his name, we send salawat, right? So then Allah's, blessings are descending upon us as every time we say his name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And last week we covered his physical description, what he looked like, his hair, his body, everything. The Sahaba were very, very descriptive in the way they described him to us. It's almost as if we can see him. That's how well they described him. And then we started the chapter of his hair specifically, and there's very, very specific chapters about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, we actually went through the whole chapter, but I'll try to pick some hadith.
Or if you know, his general description.
Yeah, okay, so generally there was a lot of repetitive hadith as well, right? Because there's multiple Sahaba mentioning the same thing about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one, he was of medium height, so he was not too short and not too tall. He used to walk pretty fast, but that was his normal walk. So the Sahaba would be panting, just trying to catch up with him. So they would have to almost jog just to walk his normal pace. So he's very, he would walk with a focus, he has a mission to go to. He would just be very, very, he wouldn't just loiter in the streets. The way we do, just walking, window shopping. That's not the way he walked. He was always on a mission. He had wavy hair, so not too curly, not too straight. His complexion they always described him like the moon, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the Sahaba said that I looked at the moon on a full night, a full moon, and then I looked at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's face, and I looked at the moon again, and I looked at his face, and it was as if he was more beautiful than the moon, right? So he couldn't even, we usually compare, brides to the moon and stuff, right? There's a lot of, songs, and, people compare, women to the moon. But he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even being a man, he was so radiant. He had so much nur on his face. So not only did he have amazing features, but on top of that, he had all this nur on his face that made him just stand out in a crowd, right? So Sahaba would, write poetry about him. They said that you're so beautiful that it's as if you were created exactly the way you wanted to be created. Right? If you could pick your features, right? What would you pick? So he said it's as if you picked your own features. That's how amazing you look, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had hair that was up to his earlobes sometimes, and sometimes up to his shoulder. Sometimes he would keep it in braids, and sometimes he would actually just let it be. There were times when he parted his hair in the middle, or he would just not part it at all.
He used to braid his hair?
Yeah, there were 4 braids in his hair at one occasion. The Sahaba counted 4 different braids.
Is that why when the people are dead, they ask us to braid their hair? Is it because of the
I'm not sure. Is that a thing?
Yes.
Okay. For men too?
For women,
I think that's more for logistical purposes, probably, because it's probably easier to deal with than to have a whole bunch of hair everywhere. Because see the braids, just because he did them doesn't mean we have to do them. Right? The men don't have to do them. So it wouldn't, I guess you could call it a sunnah, but
yeah.
It's not one of those things like a beard, they have to have a beard, right? But you don't have to part your hair the way he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's just that he had many different styles in which he, parted his hair. And now that we're talking about his hair, we have 3 more hadith left. So one of the Sahaba narrated that, Aisha radiallahu anha narrated, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked to start from the right side in his purification, and when combing his hair, and when putting on his sandals. So there's a lot of things we do every day. So for example, he would part his hair first, in half. He would go through the right side first. So when oiling his hair, he would do the right side first and then the left side. When putting on his shoes, putting on his sandals, he would do the right side first and then the left, right? When stepping into the masjid, right foot first and then the left, right? So there's this idea of doing everything good with your right hand, with your right foot, starting on the right side, and then, the left hand is reserved for things like istinja and things like that. And we go to the bathroom, we enter with our left foot, right? So these everyday sunnahs, when we follow them, we're actually increasing the Prophet ﷺ's presence in our lives, right? We're basically asking Allah for more barakah in our lives, brings barakah into our time, into our actions, when we do things exactly the way he did them. And he actually even told us in another hadith, he said that you should use olive oil, on your body and your hair, for men and women. Because he would use olive oil on his body. He said it comes from a blessed tree. So use olive oil, especially now we can find organic stuff. We can, especially if it comes from Palestine and things like that, it's even better, it's more blessed. But any kind of olive oil, we should use on our bodies, we should use on our hair, and it's sunnah to do so. And he said whoever has hair, let him take care of it, or her take care of it. So we're not, it's actually against the sunnah to not have proper hygiene. to not take care of ourselves, right? Because there were some groups of people in history, like Muslims, who thought that we have to completely remove all dunya pleasures. We have to remove ourselves from dunya completely. And so they almost took on like this monk-like attitude where like, we're not going to take care of ourselves. We're not going to wear good clothes. We're just going to wear these tattered, like ripped clothes and like this type of fabric that's very, very rough and coarse, right? And we're not going to do our hair. So like, their hair looks messy, right? And so to show like, oh, look how much I don't care about dunya. And when I believe it was Umar radiallahu anh, but don't quote me, it might be some another Sahabi, he came across someone like this, right? And this man was like all unkempt, his hair was all over the place, and he looked like he hadn't showered or changed in days. And he said, what is this appearance of yours? Like, why do you look like this? Like so unkempt. And he said, well, I'm trying to be humble, like I'm trying to just be like, not show off. He's like, no, fix yourself up. He actually told him, fix yourself up and look presentable, look proper, because that's not how Muslims present themselves, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, even though we know that he was poor out of choice, right? He chose to be in poverty. He chose to only have like 2 pairs of clothing. But even then he managed to look presentable, right? So it's not about like how many clothes you have or you have a whole like wardrobe. It doesn't matter how much you have. It's about how you use it, right? So how do you look presentable? And we also mentioned last time that as hygienic as he was, as pure and clean as he was, always in wudu, always worshiping Allah, caring about his appearance, he was not feminine, right? Because we associate self-care and a lot of like beautification with feminine, with like women basically. But he was not like that. He was not like overly, excessively the type of person like looks in the mirror all the time and is obsessed with his appearance. That's not what he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had a very specific balance, right? So while he did care about his appearance, he was not feminine in any way. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he actually, one of the other Sahabis said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ forbade combing hair except every other day. So this was to prevent the men specifically to fall into this over beautification. He didn't want the men to become so like enamored with themselves. So he said, you don't need to do hair care every day, right? Like the way we do. You don't need to like, have this like whole routine for yourself every single day. It's okay for you to just comb your hair every other day. Okay, and then we just have some repetitive hadith. Okay, so now this chapter is about the white hair in his beard and his hair. So somebody asked Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik was a companion who grew up with the Prophet ﷺ, right? Since he was 10 years old, his mother had dropped him off to his house and said, keep him, because he's in your service now. So he grew up knowing like a lot of the...
What's his name?
Anas ibn Malik. So the way we know a lot of the household habits of the Prophet ﷺ are from his wives or from Anas ibn Malik, because he was the little kid growing up in his house, right? This is after his life in Medina, basically. So somebody asked him, did the Messenger of Allah ﷺ dye his blessed hair? And he said it did not reach that point. He only had a few white hairs on his blessed temples. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh did dye his hair with henna and ketam. Ketam is another type of like a reddish type of dye. So he said Abu Bakr would use those on his hair. Another Sahabi said that I did not count the blessed head or the beard of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, except for 14 white hairs. So he had such little like white gray hairs that you could actually count them, right? And the reason why he had these is because there were certain surahs that came down, like Surah Hud. So Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that Surah Hud came down and its sisters, so like 2 other surahs. There were 3 surahs total that were so heavy in their message. They were so powerful. There were so many warnings in those surahs that it caused his hair to turn gray. Those few hairs that we're talking about, right? Because he was so stressed out for us as the ummah when these surahs came down that it turned his hair gray, basically. Jabir ibn Samura said, when questioned, he said about the white hair. So he said when he would apply oil to his blessed hair, no white hairs could be seen. And when he would not apply oil, then they could be seen. So that's how little they were, basically. They were easily covered. And then somebody else said that the Messenger of Allah's white hair was only about 20. So one said 14, one said 20, very similar in number. So the surahs were actually Hud, Waqi'ah, Mursalat, Surah Naba, and Idha Shamsu Kuwirat. I believe that's Surah Inshira. Yeah.
I'm going to write that down, I'm sorry. You said Hud and
Waqi'ah, Mursalat, Surah Naba, and Idha Shamsu Kuwirat. I can't remember if it's Surah Takwir. Yeah, Surah Takwir. So these surahs, he said, these are the ones that turn my hair gray because they're very powerful. I would recommend go and read these surahs. They're very, very heavy and they remind you of the hereafter. So they're meant to shake you up. So when they came down, the Prophet ﷺ himself was so shaken. Hud, Waqia, Mursalat, Naba, and At-Takwir. Yeah, and then... Okay, so another Sahabi said, I came to the Prophet ﷺ while one of my sons was with me. I was shown the Prophet ﷺ when I said to him, I said to myself, this is the Prophet of Allah. He was wearing 2 green garments, and he had some hairs that had turned white, but were red. So what do we know from this? In another hadith, we heard that he did not dye his hair, right? But in this hadith, we're learning that this Sahabi said that his hairs were dyed red with that natural dye, that kind of like henna. It turns your hair a little bit red. And then, okay, so another Sahabi said the Messenger of Allah ﷺ did not have any white hair on his blessed head, except for a few strands in the middle where it would be parted. So if he parted his hair, then you would see it. And he would apply oil to his blessed head, and the oil would conceal them. Okay, so this is more about different dyes. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he was asked, did the Messenger of Allah ﷺ use dye? And he said yes. Did he use dye, like hair dye? Like henna, basically. He would use henna to color his hair. Another Sahabi said, I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ leave his home while shaking water from his blessed head. He had just taken a bath. And I saw traces of henna dye. Okay, so there's more narrations about dyes. Okay, then we have the kohl that he used. So Ibn Abbas related that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, apply ithmid. So ithmid is actually, okay, they translate it as kohl, but it could also be, well, in Urdu we call it sarma. I'm not sure what it's called in. Yeah. So it's a specific type of kohl that he would use, not the artificial stuff that we use, but the natural one. He would use that, and he said that it strengthens the eyesight and it boosts the growth of the eyelashes. So Ibn Abbas said that the Prophet ﷺ actually had a container, and he would apply this kohl each night, 3 times in one eye and 3 times in the other eye. That was his way of doing it. And then another narration says that he would apply ithmid or kohl thrice in each eye before going to sleep. Okay, that's the same thing. And he actually told us to do it, right? So there are certain things, there's a distinction the scholars make, right? There are certain things the Prophet ﷺ does, and he doesn't tell us to do them. It's just for him, like he just does it because he likes it. But there's other things that he tells us to actually do it, like applying oil to your hair, applying oil to your body, applying kohl. He even said, apply kohl when going to sleep because it strengthens the eyesight and it boosts the growth of the eyelashes. And like, for example, Qiyamul Layl, right? The night prayer, Tahajjud, Qiyamul Layl, it's known by different names. So for the Prophet ﷺ himself, it was fard to pray Qiyamul Layl. Allah actually made it fard upon him, so he would be praying it every single night. Now, the amount that he prayed, like the full length and stuff, that was up to him, right? What surah he decided to read, how long did he want to stand in prayer, that was all up to him. But the fact that he had to do it, that was from Allah. But for us, Qiyamul Layl is a recommended sunnah, right? It's not like it's not fard upon us. We get extra reward if we do it. And Allah encourages us by saying in the Hadith Qudsi that Allah comes down to the first heaven, the lowest heaven, and he says, who is asking me for something that I may give it to him? Who is asking me for forgiveness that I might forgive him or her, right? So it's a very strong encouragement for us to get up and pray, but we're not obligated to do so. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of your kohls is ithmid, and it strengthens the eyesight and boosts the growth of the eyelashes. And one more note, why are there so many narrations that are repetitive? Why might that be the case? Yeah. Yes, and one narration strengthens the other, right? So when like one Sahabi says something, the other one might say the same thing, and you're like, oh, this happened multiple times. Like multiple people saw him doing this or not doing this, right? So that's one of the reasons why. Okay, so the clothing. The article of clothing most loved to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was the shirt or the qamis. So qamis is it's a long woven garment with sleeves and a pocket, and it can be translated as a long shirt or a sleeved tunic. That was his favorite type of way to dress, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and then one other narration says that the shirt sleeve of the Prophet ﷺ extended to his blessed wrist. So it was full sleeves. And then another Sahabi said, I came to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ with a group from the tribe of Muzayna so that we could pledge our allegiance to him. His shirt was open, or he said the button of his shirt was open, and I inserted my hand into the opening of his shirt and I touched the seal. So the Prophet ﷺ had a seal of prophethood on the back, and it was kind of like a raised surface, and it was kind of like reddish in color, so almost like a mole that's been raised, and it was the size of a quail egg, which is quite small. Last time we had somebody Google what the quail egg size is. So it was on the back of his, it was between his shoulder blades. So the Sahaba, they would actually have access to see it sometimes, and they would touch it to get blessing. So that's what the Sahabi is saying, that his shirt was open, so I saw it, and I wanted to touch it to get blessing from the Prophet ﷺ. Another narration says the Prophet ﷺ left while leaning on Usama bin Zayd. He was wearing a qitri garment, which basically means it's a cotton garment with colored patterns. And I guess people wear it today in Qatar and Oman and Yemen. So that means that he did not just wear plain garments, but we learn from this that he wore patterns as well, right? Like different colors, different patterns as well. And then he had thrown on loosely, and then he led them in prayer. Okay, what is? But this is not relevant. Okay, so another Sahabi said when the Prophet ﷺ would put on a new garment, he would say, O Allah, to you is all praise for having clothed me in this. I ask you of its good and the good for which it was made, and I seek refuge in you from its evil and the evil for which it was made. And this dua can be found in Hisn al-Muslim, Fortress of the Muslim. It can be found in any dua app. This is a dua of putting on new garments. So why would he make this dua? Like, what is the good? What is the good that a garment can offer you? Like a piece of clothing. Sutra? Aura. Aura. Yeah, to cover your aura, to cover the parts of you that need to be covered. What other benefits can we have from clothing? Anybody can just answer. To warm you up, yeah. So any benefits that the garment is made for, right? If you wear a raincoat, why are you wearing the raincoat? Protect you from the rain, yeah. So like, and different types of clothing can benefit you or harm you as well, right? We know certain like fibers, like artificial clothing is more likely to irritate your skin, right? Especially if you have like skin issues, you have eczema, something like that, then you have to be more careful about what you wear. So whenever he would put on a garment, he would immediately ask Allah for protection from the evil that it might cause, right? Any potential skin irritations, any, let's say it happens to be see-through and you don't know, right? Like sometimes clothing, like you put it in your house and it seems fine, then you walk out in the sun and your friend's like, do you know that that's see-through, by the way? Like that happens, right? Sometimes, like even as hijabis, we don't realize like something has a slit or like something, and then you realize, oh my God, I've been walking around like this the whole day, and like, something was open. So it happens sometimes, right? So when you put on a new garment, you make this dua, inshallah, Allah will cover you for the things that might slip out of your attention, you don't know, then you won't be held accountable, hopefully, right? Until you figure out and you fix it. So it's very wise to basically to pay attention, right? To pay attention when we do new things, when we put on new things, when we meet new people, to go to new places. Every time, like he basically had a dua for everything, right? That's what we learn. When we learn about the duas of the Prophet ﷺ, he has a dua for going to sleep, a dua for waking up, a dua for visiting the sick. So many duas for visiting the sick. Duas to read on yourself when you're sick, right? Putting on clothing every day. There's another dua that you say when you put on clothing every day. And then there's a specific dua for new clothes as well, right? So there's many different du'as for each different situation. Okay, and then there's another word here. Okay, so the Sahabi said that the article of clothing most beloved to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ that he used to wear was the hibara. So the hibara means a Yemeni type of cloth that is made from soft cotton. Okay, so it's unstitched. It's a type of unstitched clothing, whereas the qamis is a stitched clothing. So qamis is like a shirt, whereas a hibara might be like more like a shawl. It might be more of something that you just kind of put on, and it's not really a stitched material. Somebody else said, I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ as he was wearing 2 red garments. It is as if I'm looking at the radiance of his blessed shins now. And he says, I think it was the hibara. So have you ever heard that like red is not allowed for men to wear?
No.
Red in Islam?
Never heard.
Okay, so it's a thing.
It is?
Yes, but it's a very specific, so the hadith, like,
About pink. They wear pink a lot.
so the thing about pink is just because it's girly, so like, if a guy wears pink but he doesn't look girly, it's fine. You know, like, yeah.
Red is no?
No, so the red discussion is about more like, so here we clearly learned that he was wearing red, right, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there was other ahadith where he forbade men to wear red. So the discussion now is all red, like is all types of, shades of red haram, or is it just specific shades? So scholars have said it's specific shades, right? Like monks, for example. Monks wear a specific shade of brick red, right? There's different like denominations of monks. Like there's Buddhist monks, there's Hindu monks. They have different groups within their own, right? So some of them wear like this mustard yellow type of color, right? Some of them wear like the saffron red. So as long as you don't resemble them, it's okay. So for men, they're not supposed to resemble the monks. So they're not allowed to wear those specific shades that if they were wearing the shade, people would think that they belong to that group, right? So the type of clothing and that color, that's what's forbidden. But as for like regular red, it's fine. Like, like I guess like jerseys and, all that kind of stuff, that should be fine. As long as it does not resemble that group. And then another Sahabi said, I have never seen anyone more handsome than the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, as he was wearing 2 red garments. His blessed hair fell close to his shoulders. And then somebody else said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ wearing 2 green stitched garments. So I guess this is where it comes from. Like some people associate green with the Prophet ﷺ. And like even his dome is like, colored green. So maybe it comes from that.
Is that his favorite color?
I don't know if that's authentic. I would actually say it's white. Your question is so on point because the next hadith is about colors. Okay, so somebody said, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, wear white clothes. Let your living wear them and shroud your dead in them, for white is the best of your attire. So because white is associated with like purity and cleanliness, and you're able to spot if like, there's some things that you need to wash off or anything like that, it's easier to spot like najasa on white clothing as well, right? So there's an association with like remaining pure and clean. So he told us, wear white clothes, wear them while you're living, and make the kafan white. Does this mean the kafan has to be white? No. Because sometimes when the Prophet ﷺ says something, it's not an obligation. He might word it in that way, right? But it's context that tells you, is this an obligation? Is it a recommended sunnah? Is it just, is he just telling you like you're allowed to do this, right? It falls in different categories. So because he said it in the same hadith, he said, let your living wear them and shroud your dead in them. If we were to say that, okay, you have to shroud your dead in white, then we're also saying you have to wear white for the rest of your life, which we don't do, right?
So I have a question.
Yes.
So I grew up knowing that the Prophet ﷺ, everything that he does, his habits of eating, walking, is that the sunnah, like of resembling everything that he does, that's the sunnah.
Yeah.
Now, you're saying obligations when it's like directed for him to tell us like not to do something or do something.
Mm-hmm.
Those obligations are
So,
made in the hadith for us to learn, or?
yeah, so like in Arabic, the way like the command verb works in Arabic is like, even if you translate it as do this or don't do this, it's not always, sorry. So like in the Arabic, it's called, the commanding form is called amr, right? And the forbidding form is called nahi. So when you translate it directly to English, it sounds like do this, don't do this. So that's why it becomes really problematic if you read a hadith books on your own and you try to derive a ruling, right, as an average Muslim. Because the scholars discuss over, okay, this command, that sounds like a command, is it actually a command or is it a recommendation? And they only find that out through context, right? Who is he talking to? What's the occasion? Does this hadith contradict another hadith? Right? Does it seem to contradict another hadith? Because sometimes he'll say do this and then there'll be a hadith that says the exact opposite. So how do we understand that? Right? So things like that. So in here, I'm assuming because he said, wear white clothes, let your living wear them, and shroud your dead in them, because the command is given next to each other. So if we just took this one hadith and we said, okay, well, you have to shroud your dead in white, we would also be saying you have to wear white while you're living, right? But is there any obligation on us to wear white?
Yeah.
There isn't. I mean, none of us, we don't wear white on a daily basis, right? Like white, we treat it like any other color. So the requirements of the kafan does not actually include white. Like it can be another color. As long as it like meets other requirements of the kafan. Like there's a certain length that it should be, right, for men and women, and because of the way that it covers. And I believe for women, there's an extra piece of cloth that you add to cover the awra of the woman, right? So there's specific like requirements and measurements that the scholars have come up with. But as far as I know, and I'll ask the imam again, but as far as I know, white is not a requirement, right? Okay. Okay. And then the Prophet ﷺ, somebody else said that he went out one morning wrapped in a long and wide cloak made of black hair. Long and wide cloak made of black hair. Okay, so that's probably like fur of some kind. So he wore like a garment made of fur as well. The way we have like furred coats and stuff. So he had a garment made like that. And it doesn't say what kind of animal hair it was, but it just says black hair. And then somebody else said the Prophet ﷺ once wore a long Byzantine jubba over garment that had narrow sleeves. So it's a different type of like over garment, kind of like a shawl, but it has sleeves in it. Okay, so now they're talking about his lifestyle. Oh, wow. Okay, so a Sahabi said that we were with Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, and he was wearing 2 linen garments dyed in red clay. He blew his nose in one of them and then said, "Bakh, bakh." I don't know what that means. Let's see what it means. Okay, so this garment was it was a red clay that was used to dye the garment, but it took on kind of a brownish tinge. So it still didn't resemble the saffron color. And then Abu Hurairah blew his nose with it. Okay, so I think they were trying to say that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh was wearing a garment that was like high quality, because there was a time when he used to be so poor. They said there was a time when I used to fall unconscious between the mimbar of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and Aisha's chambers. So he's talking about is like the Masjid al-Nabawi, right? The Prophet's masjid, if it's here, like Aisha's house was right next door, right? There was only like a window separating the two. So he's saying that there would be times when I would be lying in the masjid and I was so poor and hungry that I would just like faint in the masjid. Like right outside her house, I would just faint. And people would come and place their foot on my neck, and I was thought to be insane, but I wasn't. I was just hungry. Okay. So they're saying that, yeah, he was living in extreme poverty, and then he started to live comfortably. Yeah. Okay, so he was describing like the type of clothes that he started to wear once his life started to become better. But during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he was still pretty poor. Somebody said the Messenger of Allah ﷺ would never eat his fill of either bread or meat unless he was eating with other people. Yeah. So we know that the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, right, that the worst container that you can fill is your stomach. Right? What does that mean? Like container? Because the stomach is not supposed to be somewhere you store food, right? Like you just keep eating and eating and eating to the point that it becomes a container. So he said you should not be filling up your stomach. He said instead, it should be 1/3 for food, 1/3 for water, and 1/3 for air. Like meaning leave some room in your stomach for it to actually move and digest, right? So from that hadith, we always learn about the etiquette of eating, right? Where you're supposed to stop before you're full. But Sheikh Hamza Yusuf had a very interesting take, and I believe this hadith is kind of explaining that. So they said he would never eat his fill of bread, which is considered a staple, right? Or meat, which is considered a luxury item. He would never eat his fill unless he's with other people. So sometimes He would eat to his fill. Why is that important? Because what Sheikh Hamza explained is that when you're with people, especially if they're hosting you, they want to feed you more and more and more. And it's more important for you to honor the heart of a Muslim than to keep your stomach half empty. It's more important. Like the rights that we have upon each other as Muslims are so much more important, and like to take care of the joy and the happiness of a Muslim is so much more important than restricting yourself from food, that if you have somebody serving you, you should eat to your fill. And so that's what the Prophet ﷺ would do. When he was sitting in a gathering with the Sahaba, he would actually eat to his fill. But when he was alone, he wouldn't do that. With his family, he wouldn't actually do that. And his family, themselves, Aisha radiallahu anha would say that sometimes 3 months would pass by, right? And there would not be a fire lit in the home, meaning because of cooking. They would just have water and dates, and that's pretty much it, right? So most of his life, he did spend not eating and fasting Mondays and Thursdays, but in company, he would eat, and he would eat well. And that is the sunnah, to do that with people, to make them happy, right? So even if like we're on a diet or something, sometimes it's part of good manners to just eat in front of someone. Obviously not if you have like a medical issue, that's different. But whatever restrictive thing we're going through, it's better to like take care of the Muslim's heart. Okay, now we're talking about his footwear, his shoes. So Najashi, who was Najashi? Do we know who Najashi was? Huh? Ethiopian king, yes. So he gifted the Prophet ﷺ a pair of solid black leather footwear, like socks, right? He immediately put them on, and then he performed wudu, and he wiped over them. So the Prophet ﷺ accepted gifts, and he accepted this gift of leather socks from Najashi, and then he wiped over the socks in wudu. Okay, and another Sahabi said that Dihya, which was another Sahabi, he gifted the Prophet ﷺ a pair of leather boots, which he then wore. And somebody else said he wore them until they tore. The Prophet ﷺ did not know if the hide of the boots was ritually slaughtered or not. Okay, this is important. So so the things that are haram to eat, they're also haram to use. They're also haram to sell and to buy. So the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did not know if the hide of the boots was halal, like if the animal was slaughtered in a halal way, the fact that he didn't know and he didn't ask, the scholars have said that the default ruling is that it is pure, right? So it's basically the leather of the animal, it's pure until proven otherwise, okay? That's just mentioned as a footnote over there. And then we have his sandals. So somebody asked Anas ibn Malik, how were the sandals of the Prophet ﷺ? And he said each one had 2 toe straps. And then somebody else said they had 2 toe straps and 2 mid-foot straps. And Anas ibn Malik took out and presented to us 2 hairless sandals, each of which had 2 toe straps. Thabit later narrated to me that Anas said these were the blessed sandals of the Prophet ﷺ. So the fact that he said 2 hairless sandals means like it was real animal leather, but the hair had been removed, right? Ubayd ibn Jurayj said to Ibn Umar, I have seen you wear hairless leather sandals. Ibn Umar said, I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ wear hairless sandals and perform ritual purification in them, so I love to wear them too. Okay, somebody else said, I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ pray in sandals that had new soles sewn onto the old. Right, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the hadith we know from Aisha radiallahu anha, right? Somebody asked Aisha radiallahu anha, how was the Prophet ﷺ in the home? How was he with his family? And she said he would like take care of his own clothes, like he would fix his own clothes, he would fix his own shoes, right? And so the Sahabi says that I saw him pray in sandals. So one, we understand that we can pray in our sandals, right? Like some people, they get really like, very like overly concerned about purity, right? Like I can't pray in my shoes because they're dirty. But sometimes the scholars have recommended you should pray in your shoes. Not on the prayer mat, obviously, not on the janam, like don't put your shoes on the prayer mat. But if you're outside or like you're praying in the parking lot or something, you should pray in your shoes sometimes. Why? Because the Jews, they never pray in their shoes. The Jews are very like, they take rulings and they become very, very strict with the rulings, and they take it to a whole nother level, and they're obsessed with these rules, right? And the Prophet wants us to do things differently than the Jews. So we're not actually supposed to follow the Jews in the way they do things. So because of that, we're supposed to pray in our sandals, our shoes sometimes. And as long as you walk in dirt that is clean, like clean earth, if you just find some soil, some dirt, and you just rub your shoes in there, that should take care of any possible contaminants, any possible impurity. Because some of the Sahabiyas, they would have their abayas trailing behind them, right, out of modesty. So then one of the Sahabiyas, she asked the Prophet ﷺ, aren't my clothes getting dirty? There's so much stuff on the road, what if somebody peed on the road, or what if there's cow dung, or something? He said what comes after it will purify what comes before it. Meaning when your clothes, when your shoes are being dragged in the mud, or even in the dirt, dry dirt, it purifies it, right? That's why we can make tayammum with earth, right? Because tayammum, dirt is purifying. So when we shouldn't have these overly strict concerns about, oh my God, are my clothes pure, impure? Are my shoes pure, impure? If you went to the bathroom and then you walked outside all over the place, you're fine. You should be content with knowing that your shoes hopefully don't have any najasa on them, right? So that's what he used to do. And the other thing we learned from this is that he used to mend his own shoes, and the Sahaba saw him wearing his shoes with a new sole underneath it. And then Abu Hurairah narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Let none of you walk while wearing a single sandal. Either wear both of them or remove both of them." Okay, so why might that be the case? Why can't you walk with just one sandal or one shoe on? You said you look crazy? Okay, so it's interesting. The Sahaba the scholars actually said that. They said it gives one an unsightly appearance. You look funny, basically. There's no need for a Muslim to look funny. They said it is undignified. Number 3, it makes walking difficult. So one scholar, he actually said, it's about justice and injustice. If one of your foot is protected and the other is not, then you're actually doing injustice to your other foot and not allowed to abuse your body like that. So that's how deep and detailed our deen is, that we're not even allowed to oppress one body part by giving comfort to one and not giving comfort and protection to the other. He says, the scholars also said, it attracts unwanted attention, which could lead to people falling into sin due to the mockery of the person doing it. And somebody else said it's the walking style of shaitan. Shaitan, I guess he walks in a funny way. So if you wear one shoe and you remove the other, you'll be walking in a funny way and you'll resemble shaitan. So you're not allowed to wear one shoe. So he actually just said wear both of them or just take both of them off, right? And when might this come in handy? If your sandal strap breaks, right? You're out somewhere and it breaks, or your shoe falls apart, or you're wearing heels, the heel breaks, now what? You should just take both of them off in that case, right? The Prophet ﷺ said he forbade that one should eat with his left hand or walk with one sandal. Okay. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, when one of you puts on his sandals, let him begin with the right, and when he removes them, let him begin with the left. Let the right be the first one worn and the last one removed. The Prophet ﷺ liked to start from the right side as much as he was able, when combing his blessed hair, when putting on his blessed sandals, and when washing. And Aisha radiallahu anha said this, so she basically saw him every day, so she told us this. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, the blessed sandals of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the sandals of Abu Bakr and Umar had 2 toe straps each. The first to have a single toe strap was Uthman. So again, is it allowed to wear different styles in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Yes, of course, right? Because there's other Sahabi who did it. But I have a feeling that Abu Bakr and Umar did it because they loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam so much. They wanted to copy him and everything. So their sandals actually resembled his sandals sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we have the chapter of his ring. I believe they're going to do adhan pretty soon. So, okay, the ring of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was silver, and its bezel. I don't know what a bezel is. Is that the middle part of the ring? I don't know what a bezel is. He said that was Abyssinian. He said the ring was silver and the bezel was Abyssinian, it was from Ethiopia. But I don't know what they mean by bezel. Like, is that the middle part, the stone of the ring or something?
I think so, yeah.
Is that the stone? Okay. Okay, so we know that gold is not allowed for men, right? So he wore silver. Ibn Abbas said that the Prophet ﷺ had taken for himself a ring of silver that he would use to seal letters, but he would not wear it. Okay, so yeah, he had a seal, like it would say, I think it said Allah or like Rasulullah or something, and he would seal his letters using that ring.
Oh,
Hmm?
his ring has what?
I had like something written on it, like Rasulullah or something like that. I believe there's like pictures you can see online. I think they've like replicated it or something. And it had like a seal with his name. So instead, because he didn't write, right? The Prophet ﷺ didn't know how to read or write. So he would have scribes, they would write the letters for him to different kings, different, people, leaders, and then he would seal it with his ring. So that was a way of showing like, this is from me, right? But the Sahabi said he didn't wear it. When the Messenger of Allah ﷺ wanted to write to the non-Arabs, he was informed that they would only accept letters made with seal. So he had the ring made. And then the Sahabi said, it's as if I'm looking at its whiteness in his palm now. So the Sahabi was remembering from when he was alive, like it's as if I can see it on his finger right now. And then there you go. The engraving on the ring of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was such that one line had Muhammad and one line had Rasul, and the other line had Allah written on it, Muhammad Rasulullah ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ wrote to Kisra, Qaisar, and Najashi. So these are different kings of different lands. He was told that they would not accept letters unless they were marked with seal. So he had a ring made for him. Its hoop was silver, and upon it was engraved Muhammad Rasulullah ﷺ. So this is significant because when kings or leaders sent letters, how did they describe themselves? It would be Muhammad ibn Abdullah, right? It would be son of so-and-so, like son of so-and-so. He did not go by that. His identity, his first introduction to people was that I am Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he did not even go by his father's name. He went as the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even his diplomatic relations, if political relations, it was not his lineage, his identity that mattered. It was his religious identity. Okay, we'll just pause. Allahu Akbar.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Okay, I think they're going to do Iqamah in like 10 minutes, so I'll just finish this chapter of the ring. 5 minutes? Okay. Yeah, I'll just finish this two last hadith about the ring and then we'll call it a day. So the Prophet ﷺ would actually remove his ring when going to relieve himself. So when he would when he would be using the bathroom, he would remove his ring, partly because it had the name of Allah on it, right? So he wanted to not wear that while he was relieving himself. And Ibn Umar narrated that the Prophet ﷺ had taken a silver ring for himself. It was in his blessed hand, then in the hand of Abu Bakr, then in the hand of Umar, then Uthman, until it fell into the well of Aris. Yeah, so basically three of the Khulafa had the ring after him, and the reason why they wanted it is because of the blessing, the barakah. And Umar radiallahu anh actually said that if the Prophet ﷺ needed something, then I need it too. Like if he needed that to stamp his letters with, then I need it too. So he would keep it as like on his desk, to also stamp his letters and things like that. So he just felt like, so it passed from leader to leader to leader, and then after Uthman, it fell into the well, and nobody ever had it again. So that is the chapter of the ring, and then there's some more details next time we'll do, inshallah, and then we're going to talk about his sword, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, next week. Okay. All right. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.